I came up with 50 tips and tricks varying in complexity to help all of you guys improve your mechanics, so let's get right into it. When resetting an edited wall that you can't see, make sure you pull your wall out and place your crosshair in empty space, a place where there isn't a build directly after the wall. Pulling out the type of build you want to edit lets you edit that build from further away. So notice how I can't edit the wall from here, but when I pull out my wall build, then I can edit it however I want. If you try to edit this wall from far away through a window, you can't, but if you stand on a cone, then you can. Your crosshair placement plays a huge role in having good mechanics, so free building in slow-mo is a great way to really focus in on making as minimal of a movement as you can, which helps you build good habits. On the contrary, if you free build on increased speed, it's really good for developing quick edit timing, which will speed up your mechanics. Playing any sort of aim trainer builds control of your mouse or your joystick, depending on which input you play, and that control also helps you to have better crosshair placement. You can buy something like Kovacs, but honestly it's not necessary, and if you want to go the free route, then maps like these work perfectly fine and they can be played on both inputs. Edit timing is super important, but something like this gets kind of boring, and honestly I don't really enjoy it myself, so if you're similar to me, then I'd recommend doing drills like these that focus on your edit timing in a more realistic manner with realistic edits that you would do in game. This is also a super great way to understand how minimal of a movement you need to make in order to complete the edit that you're attempting, and you can practice every type of edit you want with this thing. Now if you guys have been watching for a while, you know that I normally have a few maps that I'd recommend, and I leave the links down in the description, but actually the last few tips were all on the same map, so instead of having to cycle through everything I normally recommend, it's all there, and here's the code if you want to go try it yourselves. But for tip number 9, this may seem a little unorthodox, but make sure you prioritize having fun while grinding, because so many people get burned out just because they force themselves to play stuff that they don't really enjoy. Now in this game, the speed of your mechanics is super important because the faster you are, the more kill opportunities you're going to be able to create, which is why I want to highlight something I've used for over a year now, and that is ExitLag. ExitLag uses AI to connect you to your game's server through the most optimal route, giving you the best connection you can possibly have. Notice the ping I'm on in this creative server without ExitLag. Not the greatest, but all I have to do is open up ExitLag, and you can just click automatic, but I'm weird and like to manually select my server, and then you just click apply routes. It should only take a second, and then you just minimize the application. I did this part with no cuts to show you guys that my ping literally went from 60 to less than 30, which is an absolute game changer. And it's not just Fortnite. ExitLag does this for over 2,000 games with optimized servers all around the globe. It's pretty simple. All you have to do is create your account, then click download. Once the installation finishes, you're good to go. And on top of offering the most optimal connection, there are settings you can enable to get FPS and performance boost. I personally just use high performance, but you should play around with whatever works best on your system. I've noticed a consistent 20 to 30 FPS boost whenever I use these settings, so I don't ever game without it anymore. Right now, ExitLag has an exclusive birthday offer, so you can get 12 months for the price of 6 months. That's a full year half off. And what's even better is that there's duo and squad plans, which lets you save even more money. The link to get you guys started is going to be down below in the description, or you can use the QR code on screen. Now let's move on to tip number 11. And I'm going to stick to the optimization theme for now because I recommend turning off your replays. I also strongly recommend performance mode because even though it doesn't look as good visually, it's a massive difference in delay and FPS. The reason I'm showing you guys this is because these have big impacts on your delay, and the lower delay that you have, the better mechanics you can potentially get. Make sure to have your most important peripherals plugged into the back of your computer, and usually the best spot is somewhere near the top, but it just depends on your motherboard. NVIDIA settings also play a huge role in performance, so here are mine, but you can also just look up a guide somewhere on YouTube. If your system is really struggling, you can even turn down 3D resolution, but warning, it makes your game kind of look awful, so I'd only do it a little bit. Okay, let's veer off from the optimization route and switch back to the actual game. This may seem obvious, but if you're on keyboard, then you need to be using scroll wheel reset, which you can do by setting both of these squares to scroll wheel up or both to scroll wheel down. Also, if you're going for speed, then turning confirm edit on release on is probably the move for you. Now to contradict that, not everybody wants the fastest mechanics. Some of you want to be smooth or just more consistent or more practical. So if you're not worried about speed, I would consider confirm edit on release off because it lets you have better crosshair placement when going for a peek on an enemy. Oh, also this seems obvious, but I have to mention it. When you want to flip a stair, it's better to drag your crosshair to either side as opposed to all the way down the middle like this. Having the most optimal binds isn't a necessity. However, if you're on controller, you want your build bind and edit bind to be on the 2 buttons that are easiest for you to press. And if you're on keyboard, you want to make sure not all your build binds are on the same finger. I personally have all 4 build binds on different fingers, as you can see. Your movement plays a huge role in your mechanics. So what I like to do is practice editing on the right side and the left side and making sure that I can do the same build move in both directions. If you want to take it up a notch, you can try to do infinite side jumps alternating calculating which side you jump on every single time. Now this is something I see people get confused a lot, so let me clarify. If you want to focus on strictly raw mechanics, PGing somebody that's around your skill level or better is great for that, and it's what I do to improve that. For me, that's on my list of top 3 must-dos if we're talking strictly mechanics. However, a lot of people focus on their raw mechanics and forget to work on real fighting mechanics. The difference between those is that in a real game you're limited on mats, so playing 1v1 zone wars or reels, and obviously in-game, is going to teach you how to conserve those mats and effectively utilize them. If you only play PGs, you'll develop really good mechanics, but you won't learn how to properly use them. Getting really good mechanics isn't as difficult as it may seem when you watch other players do crazy free builds that you think you can never do. What I'm showing you now are different moves that I highly recommend because I've done them myself and continue to do them in order to improve. Now be cautious and don't just blindly believe everything that everyone says, but personally this is what has worked for me and continues to work for me. The way I look at it is, let's say your mechanics are bad, you can learn a couple simple moves like these ones, no matter how long it takes you, and then eventually you'll learn a little bit more and then a little more until eventually you just learn so much you have good mechanics. Now that is a lot easier said than done, and it's not that simple, and it does take a lot of time and effort depending on what skill level you start at and what skill level you want to end at, but I promise that it is that simple in terms of the path to improving your mechanics. It's not all that complicated, but it does take dedication and consistency. And again guys, this is exactly what I've done and even now continue to do in order to improve since I recently switched to keyboard. This last one here isn't too complicated, but it's really useful for getting a hang of this pretty strange jumping mechanic. Okay, what if you don't like creative? Well then you probably didn't make it this far into the video, but regardless, you can and should practice your mechanics in the dead time you have during a game. Use a few builds and try to hit a triple edit or a quad edit. I also think it's a really good idea to play not only creative, but ranked on another region because that higher ping almost forces you to be more consistent since you can't be as fast. 1v2ing and trying to escape from multiple people by yourself is something that has helped me improve drastically. So if you haven't tried doing so, I would give it a go. Get in the habit of finishing an edit in the spot best suited for where your crosshair needs to be next. A super useful trick I use all the time is sometimes you don't always want to jump this high with a new mechanic, so I do a little slide right before I jump if I don't want that animation. I've used control freaks pretty much my entire controller gaming career and they've been a game changer for me. If you're still watching, you're probably pretty serious about getting better, so this tip may sound dumb, but stretch your fingers and wrists because a lot of people really screw themselves up after years of not doing so. Now when you think of mechanics, the main things that come to mind are building, editing, and movement. But actually knowing how to phase in through someone's builds goes hand in hand with your mechs because it gives you a lot more opportunities if you know you can simply phase in most of the time. If you run straight up through someone's floor and cone, you phase in 100% of the time. If you pickaxe the floor perfectly on the way down, you'll also be able to phase in every time. It's been in the game for so long and people still don't expect the double wall mantle. When you fight someone, don't just aimlessly free build towards them, use the new-ish jumping mechanic to close the distance between you and them in order to try and snag a build piece on them. If you want to be efficient, this is probably the most effective way to protect yourself with minimal builds. If you want to take it even further, get comfortable re-editing cones so you can maneuver like this when needed. I never would have learned half of what I know now if it weren't for watching other people and trying to replicate what they do. So if you have a favorite pro player, then that's a good place to start. Or if you don't want to do all that, you can click the video on screen where I showcase a lot more techniques that you guys can learn. But if you don't care about that, then watch my progression video. It's pretty cool.